Hello everyone, Ted Simpson here. I am excited to do this painting here today. We are using a 12 by 16 Bob Ross brand canvas today. It's got a little light gray coating on it, and it makes it easier to see when we get our liquid white nice and evenly spread. So, you could use whatever brush you want here, basically. I'm breaking out the old 2-inch brush. Look at that, just a little bit. And I'm going to work it in here. And when you got that thin, even coat, that gray disappears. And it's easy to see that you've got the right amount on there. It's been a little while since I used one of these nice canvas. I usually announce it just because I find they work better. They work better than just about any other brand I've tried. They're extra primed, they're extra stiff. That light gray coating allows you to see the liquid white application. Just all around an excellent choice. You pay a little bit more for them, but the money is worth it. The money is well spent. One of the other advantages, if you don't like the painting and you want to scrape it off, give it a quick wash down with paint thinner, let it dry, the canvas holds up better than many of the other brands. Just move that. There, let's put you in the center there. So, I have to admit here, I didn't always get all my colors out first, because I never know what I'm going to do. I might change it up. And I don't think I've done this one on video before. If I have, and you find it in my video history, you better send me a link and holler at me that you caught me. I didn't think I'd repeat. And so, I'm going to get out just a little bit of the Indian yellow and a touch of the alizarin crimson. That'll get us started here today. We are doing an amazing scene based off of a Nic Hankins composition. He titled it Spectacular Sunset. And while I'm just still yammering, I'm going to get just a touch of the phthalo blue. And where is it? Where is it? Of course, we'll need our titanium white. But also, Nick makes some of the stuff here with a little bit of mountain mixture. And he kind of inspired me on a number of his paintings where he used mountain mixture instead of like blues for the sky and such. It's pretty cool. This is a very sky-centric painting, very brilliant sky. So, I'm going to take my 1-inch brush, come here, and I'm just going to pull a little bit down and tap in. Usually I have my knife, I flatten a little bit of color out, but if you're gentle, you can graze some off to load the brush. And let's go here. We're holding the brush sideways, a little bit below level, and we're just sweeping. Kind of coming out like that. Down near the horizon, maybe it flattens out. Putting a little in there. Doesn't take much, does it? Now down here at the bottom, let's kind of mirror that. Comes out to the left and sweeps out to the right. Back and forth. Now I don't really have much paint in my brush. You can wipe some off if you want. I'm just going to graze over and take out some of those brush marks. Of course, you could bolden this up as much as you want. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Now, same thing here. Wipe off my brush. I'm going to tease down a little bit of the alizarin crimson. Work some into the brush. See how I got it across the full width of the brush? And let's put in some of this alizarin crimson. And I'm putting it mostly over some of that Indian yellow. Sweeping some on. Not really blending, just trying to get the color out there first. And just a little bit over here into the water as well. Or what will eventually be the water. Something like that. Now, wipe out the excess paint. I'm just giving it a scrub into my paper towel here. And now I'm going to go over it. Same little sideways strokes. And blend the yellow and the red together here. Maybe we'll get some oranges. Just a very interesting sky. My water, I'm trying to make just basic sideways strokes here. That water's going to be nice and calm, flat. Look how it just drags out and softens right up. Find yourself picking up too much paint, just wipe some off halfway through. I'm going to give this another once over here. I wonder, I do get people here, can I go back? Can I go back and add more yellow? Sometimes you can if it's obviously very light and not very bold, like that part there. So I threw a little more yellow on there. You can see how quickly and how richly it oranges up. Throw a little bit more crimson on it. And call it good. Now, before I do too much else here, let's come in and we're going to add all sorts of clouds. Same old brush. I'll tell you what, I'm going to give it a quick little wash. Very quick, just get more of that color off. Clean the brush. Now if you go into the playlist, Nature's Brush Basics playlist, I go over the whole process I use cleaning brushes and prepping a beater bucket if you do want to beat the devil out of it but don't want to spray paint thinner everywhere. I'm going to take a little bit of that crimson, a touch of phthalo blue, and a bit of mountain mixture. Now you know that the crimson and blue make a purple color. The mountain mix is a very blue-based color as well. Let's see what we get. You don't have to do this, but it's a good way to test your colors. I'm going to mix a little bit more white in it. Look how purple that is. Still a little bit to the purple side for me. So what you can do, that's a lot of paint. It takes a lot more paint to darken it down. I don't need that much. I'm going to take some of that away. So now when I add a little bit more of the mountain mixture, there's a greater ratio of the mountain mix without loading too much paint, without having too much left over. Okay, let's see here. A little bit of that white. Mix it in. Definitely a little darker, a little grayer, meaning there's a higher concentration of the mountain mix. So, I'm going to take very little of that color and I'm going to sweep a little in here, just getting some out in the sky, no big deal. A little bit here. Little crisscross strokes, just sweeping some in here. The idea is I don't want there to be all covered up. And while I'm at it, I can take a little bit of that color and mostly focus on pulling sideways for the water. A little bit of color. And get a little bit more. Am I going all the way down? I think I am. Just getting it out there. We're not going to really soften and finish it off quite yet. Find the amount of color that works for you. If you want it a little richer and deeper, you go right ahead. Maybe I do, right here in the corners. Ooh, there we go. Now I'll clean out my brush. This little 5-second scrubby. Double check. Good enough. Now, very gentle, gentle. Soften that mountain mixture, purpley mixture into the scene. Barely overlapping that yellow. Just kind of bringing things together here. Over on this side, focusing on the mountain mix. Light crisscross strokes, ever so gentle. Soften out the water. Now what we got here is maybe some interesting extra clouds, more stuff going on here. So firstly, what I think is in the back, we're going to take a little bit of titanium white on my fan brush. It's just barely off-white from where I touched it with the knife. It had some of that mountain color on it. Nothing that's going to affect the painting. Now over on this side here, I'm going to sweep back and forth, put some paint out there, and try not to blend it in. Just interesting little sweeping clouds, getting some color off right along this area of the sky here. And if you like, you can even zing a little bit down here in the reflection. Sideways strokes, basically very, very shallow smiles, Bob would call them. There we go. And now that we've got a little bit of color in, you can take your 1-inch brush, ever so gentle, soften it into the sky, just very light. What I've taken to say is move that brush, touch it as light as possible, and hit it as few times as possible. If you can follow those two guidelines, you're not going to blend that cloud right into oblivion. Light as possible, I'm barely touching. Now for the water, I'm just going to try to keep that same horizontal movement, blur it a little bit, maybe a little bit blurrier than the sky. See how it just sort of settles in there. I wipe the excess white out of my brush. What little is left in the brush, maybe just a touch more on my brush here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of that mountain color and let's lighten it up just a little bit. You can see the difference there? It's a little bit lighter than pure dark. And let's create maybe some darker clouds here, just pushing these little shapes out here, something like that. And now, looking at my reference picture here, Nick obviously was using a bigger canvas, or he placed these in different positions. He had more sky to work with. His sky was a little bit more over here, this stripe, where mine is more in the center. And that's okay. That's fine. We're just throwing in some basic little shapes here. He even put a couple looking like they're in front of the white clouds here. A little lazy, stormy looking cloud here. Like that. Might have to make up just a little bit more paint. It only takes a second here. Couple of little stringy things happening like that. Pushing some of that darker color here, or maybe make another little lumpy cloud like that. There we go. 2 hairs here I'm barely touching. You notice here I'm just using a couple of bristles to tickle that cloud and swipe and blend it away. Barely touch. Very gentle crisscross strokes. There we go. Same thing over here. All I want to do is soften that paint a little bit, focusing on blending out the bottom, and then blurring it sideways. As I tell my students, don't spend more than, say, about 10 seconds blurring out that cloud. And then sweep up, blend sideways. Look at that. We've got ourselves a pretty dynamic looking sky. Oh, I could have done this in the previous step, but we're going to try to create a little mirror here, a little bit bulbous little cloud on the bottom, little thing like that, maybe a little horizontal one here, another little bulbous one, and a flat bottom, flat top. Take my brush. Is this the right brush? Yep, that's a dirty one. And I'm just going to blur it sideways a little bit. Ooh, I like that. This is lazy and flat. I think we got an interesting sky. Look how fast we can do these things. Isn't that great? Oh, I did forget one color here. Need a bit of green. We're going to use the green throughout the rest of the painting. I better get a little on the brush or on the palette. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of some of that light stuff that I had there. This is that same dark mountain mix with some crimson and blue in it. I'm going to add a little bit more. I'll need to make a little bit bigger pile here. Same ratio, mostly mountain mixture. Very small amount of crimson and an infinitesimal amount of blue. And to that, I'm going to add a little lump of green. This is all going to be some dark background stuff here. Now let's take a little bit of that color and mix some white into it. Kind of a grayish green color. Look at that dirty, interesting color we have here. Now, you can sit there and adjust this to whatever degree you like. The lighter it is, the further away it's going to look. The darker it is, it'll look a little closer. So I'm adding a little bit of more of the mountain mix, finding the color that works for me. I think that'll do. And just using my same old brush here, pick up some of that color, getting that chiseled wedge of color, and we're going to make some distant trees way off in the background here. We don't want to see too much detail, just a mass back there with some little spikes giving you the little indication of treetops. Touching, bending the bristles, kind of sweeping down a little bit. Keeping it tight though. Now you don't need big strokes there. Okay. With my cleaned out brush, it's still pretty dirty here. I'm not worried about it too much, you know. I'm gonna tap, 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 tap. Wipe out my brush anytime I pick up a little too much of that color. The goal is to create some mist and fog at the base of this little mass of trees. And I'm doing probably more than I should. I'm going to cover this up anyway. Gives you a nice indication though of how this works. Very light, I'm sweeping up, barely touching, just to keep everything looking tree-like there. Tap some of that out again, and the more I tap, the softer it gets, the mistier things get. Just a little indication. That's probably about all we're going to see there, right here. But it's fun to play around. Okay. Now, I'm going to pull some of this color down a little bit. This is the dark stuff. All this light colored stuff I made, I don't really need anymore. I'm going to go into that pure dark stuff, and we're going to create some layers of bushes back here. Tapping some paint on, tapping some paint off. Look at that, all of a sudden this looks like it's in front because it's darker than the previous layer. And this can go back as far as you want here. Now I am going to make some reflections, so I'm just bringing this down to mirror the shape here. Something like that. See, a little bit halfway in the sky, half of it in the water. Every time you start running out of paint, just reload the brush, and I'm tapping, making a shape, moving on. One of the reasons I want to move on here, I don't want to keep tapping. Once you run out of paint, then it starts picking up the liquid white, and I'm going to start just melting that paint away. We want to keep those nice lacy effects, those nice leafy effects. Maybe one over here, making sure I do a little bit on the bottom as well. Here's one more tree. Let's make this one a little bit darker. There it is. And it comes down a little more. That's about right. Okay, here we go. So let's take our 2-inch brush here, and I'm just going to gently press in and pull down, trying to keep this waterline level for the most part. Once I get it started, I pull down a couple more times nice and light to get a little bit of a blur going. And then very gentle. What does Bob say? 2 hairs and some air. very lightly blend it sideways. And if this isn't bold enough for you, well, heck, you could always tap in some more color. Pull it down, and look at that. We can add a little bit more there. Now that I look at it, I think it could have a little more. Let's put a little more in this front stuff here. Just a little bit more color. Let's darken this up a tad. Ah, nice. See how you can change things and add things and get crazy with it, as much or as little as you like. Now, I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff under my white here. And to make sure that it's nice and clean, I'll buff it with a paper towel. Now, Nick, always making great scenes here. Did something here, didn't really see Bob do too much, which is using not really much yellow at all in his scene here to put the highlights on the trees. We're going to focus on using a little bit of our liquid white, titanium white, tapping that color together. Look at that. Focusing on this angle. You see what bristles are tapping? Getting plenty of color up in the brush. Now I'm going to come over here, pick up a little bit of the sap green, and we're just going to focus on a light green here without really having yellow in it. Find the color that works for you. That liquid white thins the color and allows us to stick paint to paint. Thin paint sticks to a thick paint. Let's go ahead and let's dance a little highlight on there. Ooh, that is awfully bright. Makes sense on those trees off in the distance there. Tell you what, I'm going to try to change this a little bit. Make it a little bit darker. Tap some of that liquid white in there. Get a little sap green. Maybe a little bit more. There, that greens it a little bit more. Let's try this one. Ooh, there we go. Letting it get darker and darker as we work our way down. Tapping one little bushy bush, reloading the brush, doing the next little one here, trying to pick out little individuals, little sparklers. Working our way down to the water. And if you really wanted to, once we get these in there, we could even put a little bit of reflection of the highlights in the water. Let me get just a little bit more of the paint thinner. I'm sorry, liquid white. Thin down a little bit more. Come over and get my green. Need a little bit more color. You're going to run out once in a while, so make sure you have this nice texture here. Means you're getting enough paint on the brush. It's a very light touch. Now, we could come in here and put a little bit down into the reflection if you wanted to. A little bit here and there. Doesn't have to be perfect, a perfect match. There we go. I'm going to come back with my 2-inch brush, graze that down ever so gentle. Soften it. Now, maybe as you're doing this, you want to change something. And the change I want to make is I want to make more here. I want this to come a little bit more forward. Okay, this is a little further away. As I move over here, there's just a little more land over here on the right side. See how I just did that? Super simple. Come right back to my highlight. Put in a whole new layer in moments. Let's clean this up. Give myself a nice water edge. Good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a very, very tiny roll of paint on the knife. The way I've been describing this before here, even this is a little too much. We're talking a thread-like amount. Very, very small amount. I come up here, I touch, and I saw. And look at that, a little indication of a waterline there. One of the colors I forgot to get, actually it's two colors. Way off in the distance there, don't really see much land. That's why I just put a little indication of a waterline. But coming up into the front, or the left side there, maybe we do see a little bit of rocky outcropping. So let's put some in. Take a little bit of my Van Dyke brown, pull it out, cut off my little roll of paint, and very gentle, just sort of slide this on, just very flat to the canvas, and just spreading that roll. Well, maybe I'll just take care of some of that waterline there. There we go. Just that little bit way back there. That's enough. Come in here, maybe a little bit more. Just want it nice and dark, but not like overly thick. Now I take a little bit of dark sienna, titanium white, and a touch of the Van Dyke brown, kind of marbled out like that. A little more of the dark sienna. When I cut my little roll off here, I graze it over. Try not to cover up all the brown. Put a little highlight out there. Sometimes I like to come in here with the tiniest bit of white and put a second highlight, maybe just a spot or two. If it's a little too bold for you, you don't have to add that. You could actually clean your knife and wipe it right away. I like a little spot there, here or there. Now what I could do, I'm going to go backwards in a minute here. There's a couple of different ways you can go about this. Bob, of course, always works back to front, but in some of these instances here, it's okay to finish off this front stuff, and then we'll go back and put some more trees back there. There we go. Pretty simple. Now, I'm going to clean out my fan brush a little bit off screen, just wiping that extra color off. And we're going to mix up a batch of color here. Oh, this is going to be fun. Let's prepare. Got my knife here. I'm going to get a little batch of my titanium white right over there. We've got our Van Dyke brown here, maybe even a little bit more. Maybe a touch of that dark sienna into the white. Look at that, just sort of marbled in there. So I'm going to load both sides of my brush with Van Dyke Brown and then pull just one side through the lighter color. So we got dark on one side, highlight on the other side, and let's make a couple of trunks here. So when I pull down, we get a dark and a light. Maybe another little one there. There we go. You gotta find the angle that works. You know, you want to make sure that you're getting both colors off at the same time while you're drawing your little spiky tree. And maybe a little skinny one right there. Wipe that extra brown off. And believe it or not, we're going to go right back to our dark shadowy color. That's the mountain mix and a little bit of green in it. Load up my fan brush here and hopefully I got enough color. And we're going to go ahead and put in some little branches. Got our happy little evergreen happening here. A lot of this trunk at the top we're not really seeing much of. Load my brush, maybe make this tree even taller. There we go. Skip around a little bit. Let's see a little more of that trunk. Maybe this tree, you see a little bit more coming down. That one gets a little bit too. And we got one more to do here. Gotta tap down. See that? Tap down, let those bristles bend, and it'll do most of the work for you. I want this one to be a little more full. Let's just bring this one right into those bushes there. There we go. I'm going to come back and add a little bit of liquid white to that titanium white and green mixture. My highlight color, I'm going to add a little bit of the Indian yellow to it. You know, that's a little too light. That got a little too much white in there, so let's just come over here and just thin down this pile, whatever I have left of the green. That's nice. Plenty of color there. Come in and tap, tap, tap. I think I need just a little bit more liquid white. I want this color to come right off the brush with a light touch. These nice little frowns. There we go. Tap, 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 tap. Nice indications of highlights. Leaving some of the dark. There we go. Now, if I were to take a different fan brush here, pick up some of that last little bits of dark that I have, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to push in this little shape here, a little bit of land mass here at the bottom. Now there's some grays and greens and dark colors here. All we want is a little bit of dark, just so you can see where the land's gonna be, you know? No big deal. Pushing up, you can already see these little sticks and weed shapes, all this foliage. And let's see here. Nic actually took a little bit of thinned down Van Dyke Brown, thinning it with my liner brush, a little bit of paint thinner and the Van Dyke Brown, and he puts in this kind of low-lying tree here. Kind of just meanders up and out, maybe a branch or two, like that. Make sure that that trunk looks right there at the bottom. There we go, something like that. And then, with that dark paint on my dark fan brush here, let's put in a little foliage on this tree. Just a little bit of dark color that you can see. Now my light color here, my highlight brush, let's push a little highlight onto these leafy branches. Look at that. And I think we've got some room here. We've got a little bit of paint left. We've got our Van Dyke Brown, a little bit of dark sienna, and I'm just going to slather some of this on here, give this just a little rocky shape here. Come back with my highlight color and just graze over it. Look at that, just a little bit of rock happening, exposed rock there. Now using my fan brush here, see how I push up, really let those bristles bend? You can put all sorts of little highlights down here, pushing them on the back first, working my way down, and then I come around in front, overlap a little bit of that rock. But look at that, the harder you hit it, the more interesting things can occur. Look at that. Some white that was in the brush there just sort of comes out, gives it a little flowery look. Ooh, there we go. Maybe another highlight or two. I know I don't want to mess with it too much there. But there we go. We got an interesting little scene. Didn't take us much time at all to make. Maybe the lightest amount, a little bit more of the waterline. Ooh, I think that did it. Right there. Now, actually, while I'm sitting here, you could put a little bit of this grassy stuff overlapping the edge of the rock back here, just so it pushes that rock underneath the foliage, you know? There we go. I think we'll call that done. So, isn't that fun? You come up, you start with an example, and then you make it your own. Mine's not exactly how Nic did it. I kind of like this one too. So, let's come in here and just give it a little signature, a little T, a little S, a 2, and a 5. I think we got it. Thanks all. I will see you next time.